It's showtime. What's up, Yang Gang? So today we have a very special guest, and it's special because this is, I think, our first musical guest. And I was kind of drawn to him because he had posted something about wanting Andrew Yang to see a video that's on YouTube. And so had started a conversation, and today we're going to be talking with Peter Zimble, and we're going to go ahead and bring him on and get this party started. Brother, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Russell. How are you? When you first asked me to be on this program, I was gracious that you would ask me to be on the program, but I was thinking to myself, what could I possibly add to the world of Andrew Yang that your viewers would be interested in? And I was not reluctant, but I was confused. I'm like, I don't want to disappoint your viewers with not being so Andrew Yang centric, but I appreciate the way you introduced me.
Yeah, let's talk about Andrew Yang for a second. You said that you liked him all throughout the primaries, and it didn't quite get to your state before he dropped out. Talk about that for a little bit.
So yeah, no, I'm a person who, like many Americans, became acquainted with Andrew Yang at the beginning of the Democratic primaries. I thought that he had the unenviable task of trying to go from private citizen that most humans had never heard of to trying to be president of the United States. I think that is a pretty far-fetched idea to come to fruition. However, I thought that he accounted for himself very well in all of the early Democratic primary debates in those CNN town halls. I just didn't think that he had the notoriety that he was ever going to get the nominee, which of course he didn't. And I was a fan of his based on everything I heard him say in those early debates, in those early CNN town halls. However, where I live in Massachusetts, he had suspended his campaign by the time the primary got to Massachusetts. So he was not a consideration for me to vote for him. So I would not want to be disingenuous and tell your viewers that I supported him, because I couldn't have. He suspended this campaign by the time it got to my state, but I was a fan of his. And I do think that it's interesting. There were so many candidates in the Democratic primary in the early going, and a lot of people are very critical of that. Do we need any more people? And I understand that. But one good thing about that is a guy like Andrew Yang, even a guy like Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar, there were people who entered that Democratic primary that most of the country had never heard of before. And I think that their political stock rose as a result of how well they accounted of themselves in the early primaries and on that debate stage and in those town hall meetings. And I think they'll be served better moving forward in their public life if they choose to continue their public life for having had the experience. And I think that Andrew Yang's a great example of that. Like I said, he was a guy that to most Americans went from private citizen, no one had ever heard of him, opted to run for president in the United States. And most people would say, how do you go from someone that most people haven't heard of to being president of the United States? Probably not going to happen. With that being said, his notoriety rose so much. Even after he suspended this campaign, he kept his name out there with analysis on CNN. And I think that he'll be a very viable candidate for anything that he chooses to run in the future, including president, if he opts to do that again someday. But I'm a fan of Andrew Yang, to put it that way.
And now it looks like he's going to be throwing his hat into the run for New York City mayor. So we're back on the campaign trail, baby.
I had not heard that. Correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe I am wrong. I thought he lived in Schenectady.
Right now he's actually in Georgia knocking on doors because of that primary that's down there. But I think maybe, I don't know, but I know that he's already been talking to the people in the city about a run, and right now he's leading in the polls. So
again, potentially the next mayor of New York City. I had not heard that. Well, that could be interesting.
It could be, but I don't know, man. I kind of feel like it's kind of like that trap job.
You know, I used the word unenviable earlier in this interview, and that's almost an unenviable job. I mean, there's a lot of people, a lot of businesses, so many moving parts to run the city of New York City that I feel like whoever is the mayor of New York City everyone in New York City mocks them at the time they're mayor. And once they're no longer mayor, people are like, oh, that was our mayor. He was fine. The one exception to that rule, oddly enough, is post 9/11 Giuliani. People loved him, and now people are like, that guy's crazy. I don't know why we ever were down with him. So
it's nuts how things just like switch in a heartbeat, especially in New York City. So
yeah.
I don't know.
America's mayor. Yeah, at one point, Rudy Giuliani, America's mayor, and now we're all watching clips of him, you know, with far-fetched conspiracy theories going, you didn't have to fall this far. What are you doing? So I don't know. Andrew Yang for mayor of New York City. I had not heard that, but that is interesting. I actually had a friend from New Jersey who I believe attended a very early Andrew Yang fundraiser for president. I'd be interested in her perspective of this because she lives rather close to New York City, though she's not a citizen of New York City at the moment. But she was an early campaign donor, I think, to Andrew Yang before anyone really knew who he was on the national front. So I don't know. By the way, you mentioned at the beginning of this interview that I had tweeted something about Andrew Yang watching a music video that I had made. Did I do that before you had asked me to be on this show, or did I do that one today? Because I did do it today, as a result of me being on the show, but I did not know that I had done it before. Did I?
Yeah, I think you tweeted at me and was like, can you get Andrew Yang to listen to this video or something? I don't know. I can't remember. I'd have to go back through my tweets. But regardless, we're sitting here today. And why is it that you want Andrew to see this video so much?
Okay, so here's the honest truth, the God's honest truth. So I have an EP out, a 3-song EP that's available on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, YouTube, all the fine places where music is streamed under the name Nudge Sounds, called Songs About Girls and Criminals. And we put out a single and a music video for a song called Ballad of the Bizkit that I know that you've heard and enjoyed. And the video came out on October 28th. And it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek, semi-tribute to the band Limp Bizkit. It's an odd way to describe it, but if you watch the video on YouTube, which I know you've posted on your Twitter, and I thank you for that, people understand it more. Well, when it came out on August 28th, that first day, Fred Durst of Limp Bizkit put something up about it on his Instagram story without really us asking him to do it. I don't know how to contact Fred Durst outside of, social media, hoping he sees it. So Fred Durst put something about the video on his Instagram story. DJ Lethal from Limp Bizkit put something about it on his Instagram story. And also a guy named Kevin Kenny, who is a DJ at Alt 92.3 in New York on a radio program that's simulcast all across the country and on radio.com, who also hosts TV shows on MTV. He put something about it on his Instagram story. That was the first day the video came out. If we had a day like that every day with that song of people with significant social media followings tweeting about Nudge Sounds, Ballad of the Bizkit, it would be a huge song. So it got like 15,000 listens in a 24-hour period, which for an independent release is pretty big. And I was blown away by it. So I think that I was just like, who has a lot of Twitter followers, a lot of Instagram followers that seems to be cool enough they might get the joke and might share it? And I think that Andrew Yang falls in that category. He does tweet about things that I enjoy all the time, completely outside of the realm of politics. So that was probably my logic there. So Andrew Yang, if you're watching, I want you to tweet the video for Ballad of the Bizkit to your presumably millions of followers on Twitter. That'd be great.
And I'll tell you what, you was talking about how cool Andrew seems. And, we were fortunate enough to be able to spend a lot of time around him during his campaign. And one of those places was actually in Boston, Massachusetts. And
Really?
at the Boston rally, man, if you missed that, I'm telling you what, you should definitely check out the video on our YouTube channel, because that was a rally. It would make your damn hair stand up on end. It was crazy, man.
Correct me if I'm wrong here, because I could be wrong. So in the Democratic primaries, you had the Iowa caucus, which Andrew Yang was a part of. Then you had the New Hampshire primary, which is very close to Boston. He didn't make it quite to Super Tuesday, which is when the Massachusetts primary is, but he did do campaign events in Boston.
We have a large contingent of Yang Gang down in Massachusetts. and we're pretty big there, believe it or not. And yeah, we had a rally down there. It was last year, and
Wow.
I'm telling you what, the energy in that place was just incredible. And it was like that night I was like, man, we could really win this thing. It was nuts, dude.
I knew we did some get out the vote events in Windham, New Hampshire, which is a town kind of on the border of Massachusetts and New Hampshire that I've done a lot of business in my life. And no, I was unaware that the Yang Gang had made its way to Massachusetts at any point. But that's cool. Did anyone ever sing "That's the Sound of the Man Working on the Yang
I,
Gang"? Or am I the first to do that?
no, I sing that song in my head all the time.
I want to make sure that I'm not the first to have done that parody. Someone had to have thought of that before me.
I just haven't gotten anywhere else with the lyrics. That's
Okay,
about as far as I've got.
you got the hook. That's all you really need, right?
That's right. So tell me about this video that you did. Like, what was the process like? You just woke up one day and you guys were like, "Hey, man, we got this album." Like, how did you make it? What was the process like? The creative process?
So the song "Ballad of the Biscuit" was written last year. A good friend of mine named Chris J is the lead singer of a pop punk band called Army of Freshmen, based out of Ventura, California. And they were playing a one-off show with a band called Nerf Herder. Do you remember Nerf Herder at all?
I don't.
Yeah, they were an alt rock band, or they still are an alt rock band, but they were an alt rock band that in the '90s had one semi big novelty hit with a song called Van Halen that was a tongue in cheek tribute to Van Halen with all these weird Van Halen references in the song. And it got played all over rock radio and all over MTV like circa 1997. And when they were playing a show with Nerf Herder last year, I just kind of said to him as a joke, I said, I'm going to write a song like that about Limp Bizkit. He laughed and probably didn't think anything more about it. But I got off the phone with him. I picked up my guitar and I wrote the song like literally in 10 minutes. Very true to what it would become. There were some changes on what it would become later. But the first and third verse and like the chorus are pretty much exactly the same. So I wrote the song and I recorded it on my phone and sent it to him as a joke. And I was laughing to myself. I'm like, man, this is really good. This is funny. And the next day I listened to it again and I'm like, man, I don't know why I thought that was good. It sucks. It's horrible. I can't even. And I call him. I said, hey, I sent you a song yesterday. Don't even listen to it. You won't even like it. It's terrible. And he said, I already have listened to it. And I think you have something there and you've got to record that. I'm like, all right, cool. So recorded it at the beginning of this year at a studio in California. And then I had, I have a lot of friends who are into cinematography and videography and things like that. And everyone got pretty bored at a certain point this year with this pandemic. And people sitting around either doing nothing or doing less than they normally do. And I got together some friends. We made the video and we did everything safely. I've had a bunch of tests through CVS for COVID. I've never tested positive, and everyone who's involved in the video was very cautious as well. And we shot a video for it and put it on YouTube back in October. And like I said, that first 24 hours, it was much more successful than we ever could have imagined that it would have been for just an independent EP release, on our own. So that's pretty much the process of it. And it's out there under the name Nudge Sounds. If anyone wants to look it up on YouTube, Nudge Sounds. And you can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, like us on Facebook, all that stuff. Nudge Sounds.
I guess the reason it was special to me was because, like I was telling you, that the very first concert that I went to was Limp Bizkit and Method Man in Charlotte, North Carolina. And it was also the disclaimer, drug alert. It was also the first night that I ever tripped acid.
Oh, wow.
And so we're sitting there in the audience, dude, and Limp Bizkit and Fred Durst is on the stage, man, and he is just like going off. It's all about the he said, she said bullshit. And it was crazy. And like all of a sudden, man, the pyrotechnics went off, and there was this huge column of flame that just like erupted behind the stage, dude. And because I was tripping on acid, I'm sitting there and I'm like, whoa. So for me, it was kind of like this spiritual experience, with Limp Bizkit.
So it's weird. When I wrote the song, I think the press release that announced the video being released said that this is the socio-political look at Limp Bizkit that no one ever truly asked for, which is a joke. But at the same time, it's you mentioned the impact they had in your life. From 1998 to about the early part of 2002, Limp Bizkit was like the biggest rock band on the planet.
Mm.
If you were into rock music at that time as a kid, you definitely owned at least one of the first three Limp Bizkit albums, and you probably saw them live. I never got the chance to see them live, but I had all of the albums. And then at some point, everyone kind of treated them as this late 90s, early 2000s joke. They became the band that was cool to like, became the band that was cool to hate. And I think to some degree, their massive popularity is largely forgotten. So obviously when we made the song and the video, it was trying to tap into the nostalgia of people saying it's been 20 years. We can all admit that we were all down with Break Stuff and Nookie and Rollin'. Everybody loved those songs at the time. And if you're pretending in retrospect that you didn't, you're probably just lying to yourself. So I think that they're a band that influence has been somewhat forgotten, except when it's talked about in a negative light. They always get mentioned when you talk about all the stuff that happened at Woodstock, but people like you have fond memories of Bizkit, as do I. I wrote a whole song about it, and it was tongue-in-cheek, but there's some earnesty there. I mean, I don't have any bad memories associated with listening to Limp Bizkit with my friends in the late 90s, early 2000s, drinking excessive amounts of caffeinated sodas and playing basketball and riding our bikes and skateboards in the summertime. So I hope that comes across in the song as well. It's tongue-in-cheek, but it's also earnest. You said
Yeah,
with
for sure. Like Limp Bizkit, like people they don't remember. And then, like from what I understand, they had a falling out with their record label and things kind of went south. And from that point on, they split. But apparently he's still doing big things. He's directing movies, he's still touring, at least for COVID.
Yeah, I know that Fred Durst made a movie. He directed a movie a few years ago that starred John Travolta. I know the guitarist Wes Borland just put out an album the other day called The Astral Hand. It's kind of a guitar instrumental record. If you listen to it, it'd be really cool soundtrack to like a movie or a video game or something like that. It's actually pretty good. So they're still out there doing stuff as best they can. I think everyone else is out there doing things as best they can, given the current circumstances of this ongoing pandemic, COVID-19. But, I was watching the news this morning and, vaccines have started to be distributed. So hopefully over the next few months, that goes away and things can get back to normal.
Yeah, man, it's kind of scary though. I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means, but like the tech that has gone into these vaccines was considered experimental, just last year, and now all of a sudden, it's not experimental anymore. Come on, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I think that time pretty much everyone's going to get the vaccine. And I read something somewhere. Live Nation, which is the biggest concert promoter in the entire country, they were going to require that anyone who purchased tickets to one of their concerts, and they do all the big concerts at arenas and stadiums and things like that, anyone that purchased tickets to their concerts to attend said concert was either going to need to be vaccinated or have a negative COVID test in X amount of time of the show. And I think that measures like that from a company as big as Live Nation, when it comes down to it, people are going to say, do I not go out and do things, or do I just get this vaccine and go and do things? I think people are going to go get the vaccine. So, people are saying it's safe. I saw somewhere that all the living presidents who had 2 terms, Clinton, Bush, and Obama, were all going to get one together on national television just to kind of, spread the word that it was okay. So I don't know.
Are they really? Are they really? Or are they getting like a placebo? I don't know, man. Because I'm a Gen Xer, right? And as a Gen Xer, it's like we've been fed these lies and this bullshit our whole lives about how it's so easy for us, American dream is still out there, and Nah, bro, we've all gotten poor. We've all gotten, it's crazy. Like when I was younger, my grandpa worked at Goodyear in Akron, Ohio. And, he was that generation where he was the last generation where you could work your whole life and then retire on a pension plan or whatever. And then like the factories closed down in Akron and like everything went to shit. And the city just got poorer and poorer and poorer. And that was kind of my generation. We're supposed to be, we were told that if we worked hard, we'd be able to succeed. Well, I see a lot of people who bust their ass for 60 hours a week who aren't succeeding. They're still broke.
Well, hopefully this vaccine comes to fruition. Hopefully it's effective. I would just like to look back at the time we're in 6 months from now and say, you know what? We got past that. Things are normal again. And hopefully upward and onward, people will be able to gather in large crowds once again at some point without really having any fear in their mind that they're going to come away ill as a result of it. So hopefully it all works out, my friend.
For sure. And for somebody in your industry specifically, that's huge, right?
Yeah, so it's weird you mentioned that. My real job, if I really have one, is I run a company called Boston Boxing Promotions, and we put together boxing events. And we haven't done a show in front of a full audience since January of this year, because once the pandemic hit in March, the idea of having 1,000 people in a room together is just not it's obviously not a good idea. The CDC says don't do that. They're super spreader events. And, that also lends itself to bands playing live and performers. I don't know if you've seen this. There's like restaurants out there that have had, just like guys with acoustic guitars, which I guess essentially is what I am. They can't perform at local restaurants while people are eating and drinking just as music, because, as you're saying words out your mouth, you could spit and droplets could land and people could get COVID, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, no, anything that is a live performance has been affected greatly as a result of this. I mentioned Live Nation moments ago. I read something, and I'm going to mess up the statistics to some degree, but like their revenue has gone down 97% or something during this pandemic. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, where do you account for the 3%? Like, where are you even getting the 3%? There's been nothing. So yeah, maybe there's some states, who knows?
You said you did a boxing promotion. Is that right?
Yeah, I own Boston Boxing Promotions, actually. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy because I love any kind of combat sports. I'm big into the UFC. And you watch their shows, and even there's nobody in the audience. There's no, and it's got to be, at least with them, they have money to like that are padding their pockets. They're not hurting for money.
Yeah, so what they're able to do is, because ESPN broadcasts their fights, they can get money from ESPN or from pay-per-view to put on their fights in front of no one. And while there's no live gate of an audience, you're still getting the income generated by all the commercials on ESPN and all the people buying on pay-per-view. With my company, Boston Boxing Promotions, we did run 3 shows during this pandemic, and 2 of the 3 of them were very much like those UFC shows, except on a much, much, much smaller scale. We did empty arena shows that were live streamed on YouTube, and we just kind of had sponsors foot the bill as best we can. It was a far cry from what we did pre-pandemic, but it was just something to keep us afloat and keep going. So we did 2 shows like that. We did one actually limited audience show in the month of November, where we had 217 ticketed people watching an event that normally would be viewed by, about 1,000 people. And, we tried that. I don't think we'll be going back to that anytime soon. But yeah, it's just everyone's going to adapt to the circumstances. And like I said, not only adapt, but just get through this as best we can and hope it ends at some point.
Dang, we have 10,000 subscribers on this channel. We appreciate every one of them. So if you ever need an extra live streamer to YouTube, just holler. We're up here in Vermont. We're right next door, man.
I want all 10,000 of your subscribers on YouTube to subscribe to the Nudge Sounds YouTube channel, and also subscribe to the Boston Boxing Promotions YouTube channel. And then I still want to see if Mr. Andrew Yang will tweet out the ballot of the Bizkit video, because that would be like October 28th all over again with his. How many Twitter followers do you think Andrew Yang has? Got to be over 1 million, right?
I'm not sure. I'm one of them.
As am I. I think I follow him from 3 different accounts, actually, so I'm 3 of them.
And he follows me, so we interact on occasion. It's not anything like it was during the campaign, but yeah, we still interact.
Now, you were very active in the campaign, I take it?
Oh yes, for sure. For sure. We actually heard about Andrew Yang. We saw him on Joe Rogan, on the Joe Rogan podcast. And this was back before the Jim Clyburn fish fry in South Carolina. This was in the early days. And we went to see him. He was going to be in South Carolina. And we went to see him, and he was in a field. He was literally in a field. And this guy is standing there in a suit and a scarf. And I'm like, how is he not just burning up, man? And we introduced ourselves, and I told him that I was a lifelong conservative and that I believe that I was going to be registering as a Democrat just to vote for him. And he high-fived me in the middle of the field. And it was one of the coolest experiences that I'd ever had. Because when I saw him on Joe Rogan, I was like, finally, here's somebody who claims to be a politician that is actually talking about the things that matter to me as a poor person, or the things that matter to me that I've gone through in my life. Like universal basic income was such a revolutionary idea. That I've been homeless before, and I thought, wow, we could virtually solve the homeless problem in America with universal basic income. And I was like, we've got to do whatever we can do to get this guy elected. And so we started a YouTube channel, and in the old days, we started showing people how to yang people. We would go into like stores and stuff and just record us talking to people about Andrew Yang, and it just kind of evolved from there. And we ended up following him for most of his campaign, live streaming his events.
Wow, that's quite the tale. So I was wondering how you guys get 10,000 YouTube subscribers, but he had a great grassroots support system on the campaign trail, and I guess that helps you out with your 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. I just want some of those subscribers. Give me 1,000 of them, I'll be good. All right, Russell?
Hey, brother, we can probably make it happen. I'm telling you what's the truth, man. It's so cool because the people who watch this channel are so dedicated and so loyal, and they're here like show after show after show after show. And it's really awesome, and it's really humbling to be able to actually work for the Yang Gang. Because, I know what it's like to bust my ass as a server at Olive Garden. I know what it's like to work in a machine shop. I know what it's like to put in the hours and the hard ass work. And so for me to be able to actually work for the Yang Gang, man, it's incredible, dude.
That's great. Now, you said to me, do your viewers know where you were based geographically in the country?
Yes. I am in Vermont right now.
So you're in Vermont. I'm in Massachusetts. New Hampshire, which we mentioned earlier, is the one state in between us, which is interesting that you're so on that you get so heavily involved with the Yang Gang, because obviously, I mean, Bernie Sanders is running Vermont as far as I can tell. Huge support there.
Yeah, well, see, the thing is I'm not from around this neck of the woods. I'm from North Carolina. And that's where we first saw Andrew Yang, was at the event in South Carolina. So we were in North Carolina, and we drove down to see the event. And we thought we were actually being forced to move because the guy who was renting our house, he had a sick family member and needed it for his sister to move into. And we weren't going to be assholes and tell him, no, you can't do that. So we decided that the best use of our voice would be to move up here towards New Hampshire and see if we could try to help the campaign in any way that we could.
So the fact that you moved to Vermont was a direct result of being involved in the Andrew Yang campaign, the fact that it bordered New Hampshire, which was going to have the first primary?
Yes, absolutely. That was the deciding factor. We actually, my wife and I, and some friends, and my sister-in-law, we all were able to get him on the ballot here in Vermont. And we actually have a video up where we delivered the paperwork to Montpelier and the whole thing that went on with that to get him on the ballot here in Vermont.
Wow. Well, I hope you've enjoyed your stay in New England thus far. Vermont's a lot different from where I live, just south of Boston, but a nice, quiet little state in the region of New England. I was actually there just for a weekend over the summertime.
Oh man, I'm telling you what, Vermont is probably the most beautiful state that I've seen. And I've seen a lot of the states, especially since the campaign. Following Andrew, I mean, we've been to Detroit, we've been to Portland, we've been to New York City. It's been a wild ride for us, man. We were in on CNN, we were in Fox News, the New York Times. We were interviewed by Barry Weiss. Pretty crazy stuff.
Pretty crazy stuff. I just noticed now, 30 minutes into this interview, that you have a hat on that says math, which is very Andrew Yang like.
Yes, that is from the campaign store. I probably have more math hats than I know what to do with, to be honest with you.
I was always terrible in math growing up, but if you send me one, I will rock an Andrew Yang math hat around town.
Oh, I will definitely do that. And as a matter of fact, I will try to see if I can get you one that has his signature on it. How about that?
I'd appreciate that. Like I said to you earlier in the interview, I am fascinated to see what he does moving forward with his political ambitions. And the news that you broke to me that I had not heard before about him potentially running for mayor of New York City, I find that to be very interesting. I could see him fitting in quite well in New York City.
I could too, and I was kind of aggravated at first when I first heard the news that he was going to be throwing his hat into that ring, because I thought that there was no upside, that the establishment DNC was going to do what they do. They were going to do what they did to him this time. They weren't going to push him. They already have their candidates. Their next candidate is going to be Kamala Harris. We already know that. And so I figured that there was no way that this had any kind of upside. But somebody brought up a great point, and it really resonated with me after I thought about it. If you know the type of person that Andrew Yang really is, if you spent 10 minutes around him, you see how genuine a person he is. And if you've seen anything after the campaign ended, he's done more to help people than Congress has. With Humanity Forward, sending out grants to people, he's literally put probably just about as much money in people's hands as Congress has. It's crazy.
Is that some of his financial policies, which he established very early on in the campaign, some adaptations of them, you can argue, were implemented by the Trump administration when the pandemic began, like the stimulus and stuff like that. They kind of had a little Andrew Yang to it, if you really think about it. He was ahead of his time.
He's still ahead of his time. And I honestly believe, okay, I understand that the establishment wanted Joe Biden. He was a safe pick for everybody. He's business as usual. That's Joe Biden. And I really believe, though, that the one person that Donald Trump feared up on that stage was Andrew Yang. Because there would have been nothing that Donald Trump, any zinger that Donald Trump threw, Andrew would have just deflected it back to him. He's way too smart. And insiders in the Trump administration admitted that he was the one person that they were afraid of.
Yeah, I think the drawback on him from the get-go was he was a guy who did not have, and part of this is a criticism of Donald Trump as well, running for the highest office of the United States presidency without any previous elected official experience is a very daunting task. Not only did he not have any previous elected official experience, like I said, most people didn't know who he was until the Democratic primary, and got his name out there a lot more. Well, moving forward, it's going to serve him well. But I think that maybe some people were reluctant to support someone in the beginning who had no previous elected official experience, because look where that got us this time, right? So.
But that's just it. That's exactly why there was a shit ton of us that wanted Andrew Yang as president, because he wasn't like everybody else. He wasn't an elected official. We don't want fucking politicians. Look at all what the politicians have gotten us now. I mean, it's nothing but corruption. And I think Andrew's mistake during the campaign was when we were at the Boston rally and we were at the Portland rally, he was connecting with a segment of people who had either not voted before or was so sick of the establishment that they wanted somebody like Andrew because of his policies. And then he went to started going to Iowa, and he started to go into New Hampshire. And I really think that's where he lost it. He started doing these stump speeches instead of rallies. But if there was one thing that Trump proved, was that a populist could win. And I feel like if Andrew would have kept connecting with the young people and the disengaged voters, we could have had Andrew, man.
Was he able to pull any delegates out of Iowa or New Hampshire? I can't remember.
Fuck Iowa. Man, okay. I'm telling you why. Fuck New Hampshire. Man, those two states pissed me off so damn bad, dude. Because the people there, especially the people in New Hampshire, there's not a whole lot of poor people in New Hampshire. There's some, but there's not a whole lot of poor people. And Andrew's main message was universal basic income. He should have kept his ass down there in South Carolina where the broke folk vote was. Because everybody in South Carolina's broke. Everybody in North Carolina's broke.
Now, was he in the South Carolina primary? I can't remember if he suspended his campaign after New Hampshire or South Carolina.
It was before. Oh my gosh, I was so fucking mad, dude, when he suspended that night, because we had literally sacrificed so much trying to get to move this train forward. Money that we didn't have, resources to travel, and sacrificed everything, even our home, stability of a place to live. And the night he suspended, dude, it was just like a smack in the face, because it was like, no, you have to wait at least until South Carolina. That's where the broke people are.
Do you think that it would have been better for him in South Carolina had he stayed in?
Yes, at the very least, and he's still doing it. Right? He's still pushing forward his agenda. He's still working on behalf of poor people. But I really believe, man, that if he would have just stayed in until South Carolina and just kept pushing, because we had Dr. Jermaine Johnson down there who was a big part of the campaign, and he actually ended up getting elected and running on an Andrew Yang type platform, and he got elected in South Carolina. And man, if we could have just kept pushing. But I think Andrew, he knows the type of people who were supporting his campaign. And a lot of people who were supporting his campaign were broke people. And because, we need that universal basic income. That would have been revolutionary for so many people. And I think he didn't want to take any more money from us. I think that's what it was.
So what's your thoughts on his political career moving forward? Do you think that he should run for mayor of New York City? Do you think he should try something at the state level in New York? Do you think he should vie for president once again on Sunday?
See, that's the problem, right? Okay, if he does run for mayor of New York City, he's got to sign a paper that says he has no intention of leaving that office to run for a higher office, right? Now that can be fuzzed. If you get down the road 2 years for the next run in 2024 and you're like, hey, the country's not where I thought it would be. I feel like I have to run, for this higher office. Then yes, he can do it. But he looks opportunistic if he does that, right? He looks like he's just trying to climb the political ladder.
And I also feel like whoever the incumbent is, generally speaking, an incumbent doesn't have any serious challenge within their own party when they're running for re-election, at least from what I can remember. So if it's Biden and Harris again in 4 years, if they choose to run again, which I imagine they would, you often don't see challengers from within the own party challenge an incumbent. I mean, you'd agree with me on that, right? That doesn't happen too often, does it?
That's the problem, man. And this is what pisses me off so much about Andrew Yang being a Democrat. to be honest, because I see how corrupt. Well, both sides are corrupt. Let's just be honest. And they put in front of us who they want us to vote for. It's the two-party system. I really feel like Andrew Yang should run this third party. He should look at the DNC and be like, fuck y'all. Y'all are nothing but corrupt. You're the exact antithesis of everything that I believe in. And I feel like he would win a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, but that's probably, I would say this in his defense of the theory that you just said. I mentioned earlier that going from being a private citizen to running for president of the United States is a very daunting task to begin with. Doing that not on a major party platform, I think, probably decreases your odds even more significantly. So he probably made the right call running as a Democrat this time around, because he was able to, he got his name out there, and he was able to get himself on some platforms that the DNC allowed, like those debates, which he accounted very well for himself of, the town hall meetings. And I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see where he goes moving forward. But like I said earlier in this interview, and I've said a few times, I thought that name recognition-wise, he got his name out there in a very positive light. You never really heard anyone say anything too critical of Andrew Yang, who was his opponent in that primary, outside of the fact that maybe he lacked experience as an elected official. And you said earlier there's some positives of that as well. So I think he's got a bright future ahead of himself with whatever he opts to do in the political field, if he does choose to pursue the political field.
Man, that's the problem, though, right? Because like once he throws his hat into the ring for mayor, he's gonna piss a lot of people off. No matter what side, no matter how much good he does, he's gonna piss a lot of people off.
There's no mayor in New York that gets out of that unscathed, really.
And that's the problem, because like if he does decide to run later, they're gonna be like, oh well, look, he couldn't even get his policies passed in New York City. What makes you think that he could be the president of the United States? I just foresee a lot of problems with it, man.
Well, maybe he'll give you a call one of these days. I'm sure that he's appreciated the great support that you've given him throughout the campaign and even beyond. And I'm happy that I'm here on the Yang Gang podcast. Like I said to you before this interview, I was a little nervous that I wouldn't have too much to add that your viewers would want to hear, but this has actually been a good discussion about a lot of things, ranging from music to politics to all things Andrew Yang. And Russell, we're going to get Andrew Yang to retweet the Ballad of the Bizkit video, right? Or put it out there, right? That's the goal, right?
Absolutely. That's the goal, brother. We're going to see if he'll put it out there for us.
He will tweet out the Nudge Sounds Ballad of the Bizkit video. We can have a day as big as October 28th when that video first came out and exploded. And you just got to put it in front of the right eyeballs and see if it spins from there and keeps on moving forward, my friend.
That's right. Peter, I know our time is short. Do you have any last words for our audience that you'd like to say?
Yeah, folks want to check out Nudge Sounds, Songs About Girls and Criminals EP. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and YouTube. The video for Ballad of the Bizkit is available at youtube.com/Nudge Sounds. I hope that many of your 10,000 YouTube subscribers subscribe to the Nudge Sounds YouTube channel as well. And follow us across different social media platforms. And I just thank you so much for asking me to be a part of the show today, Russell. And keep on doing what you're doing, my friend. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate your passion when it comes to everything.
Absolutely. Peter, let's do this again.
Absolutely. Would love to. Anytime, my friend.
All right. Well, there you have it, Yang Gang. Like he said, man, that was an incredible discussion about a lot of topics. And one of the things that we love to talk about here on this channel is Andrew Yang. And the fact that he was an Andrew Yang supporter in Massachusetts. Hey, any of our Massachusetts Yang Gang that's down there, y'all get at him. Y'all make it happen. He's an incredibly gifted and talented singer and songwriter. And it was a pleasure to have him on here. Yang Gang, we appreciate you. Thank you so much to our Patreons and our donors. And thank you so much for the super chats that came in today. We appreciate it very much. Yang Gang, we love you. We'll see you on the next one. Be good to each other.